course, have suggested that relationship-building interrogation techniques are preferable and even more reliable in the long run than stress methods. They raised the question, though, what about the hard cases? And like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was a mastermind of the September 11th attacks in this country. How would you respond to the observation that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed probably is not susceptible to relationship-building methods? And I can tell by your grin, you acknowledge the somewhat absurd thought that you could move people who have masterminded the death of more than 3,000 Americans by Oprah Winfrey methods. So if you could respond to that question, I mean, would you have sought, how do you think the United States should seek to gain information from a mastermind like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed if he refuses to answer questions voluntarily, when additional American lives could be on the line with information that he's refusing to provide?
Thank you, sir. I very much appreciate that question. It seems to go, that question seems to go to the heart of many of the issues that we're discussing. I'm not sure how thrilled Oprah Winfrey would be to characterization of her methods in that particular way. I think I've got to say, by way of outset, I come from a country which spent 15 years involved in facing terrorism on the streets. I mean, I grew up in a country where my mother wouldn't let me go shopping on Oxford Street because bombs were going off at times on a weekly basis. And that experience has had a very profound effect on how the United Kingdom addresses precisely the question that you have addressed. And the thinking in the British military and the thinking across the board politically, it's really not a left-right issue. It's a broad consensus in the United Kingdom, is that coercion doesn't work. That the experience of the United Kingdom, which moved in the early 1970s to use techniques that were very similar to those that were used on detainee 063, hooding, stress positions, humiliation, and so on and so forth, didn't work. The view is taken in the United Kingdom that it extended the conflict with the IRA probably by between 15 and 20 years. Because what it did was that it outraged the community that was associated with those who were subject to these particular techniques. And it created a breeding ground, a recruiting ground, which made it impossible for the British government, if you like, to persuade those who were associated with the IRA but had not crossed the line into use of violence to think another way. And so in answering your question, I'm profoundly influenced by that experience. And one of the great regrets that I have is that the administration never seemed to turn for advice to its closest allies and ask them, what was your experience when you faced a similar situation? And the answer they would have got from whatever government it was, Conservative, Labour, is don't go down the route, one, of using coercion, and two, don't call it a war on terror. Why? Because by calling it a war on terror, you transform criminals into warriors, and you create a context in which they are able to recruit in their struggle. And if you notice, neither Prime Minister Blair nor Prime Minister Brown, nor indeed the Conservative leader of the opposition ever uses the phrase war on terror because of the experience with the IRA.